Yo, what's going on guys, Arekkz here, welcome back to another Destiny 2 video, and in today's video we are once again talking about exotics. If you guys saw the video that I uploaded a few days back, then you would have already seen 3 new exotic weapons in action. They were of course the ones that were usable and playable at the hands-on event, so if you guys haven't seen that, I will link the video down below. That of course includes some in-depth gameplay. However, now that I'm back home and I've had a chance to start sifting through the gameplay trailers, the vidocs and all the other information, there are actually a load more exotics that have been sighted. At this stage we of course don't know their names or their perks, but they have been seen, and there are actually 14 in total. So I figured in this video we would take a look at all of them. If you do enjoy this, then a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below if you have any questions, let me know what you guys think of them and which ones are your favourites. But let's kick things off with, let's be honest, the one that instantly jumped out to me, and I'm sure a lot of you guys as well, during the reveal, and that is Dubious Volley. Well, I say it's Dubious Volley, we don't actually know the name of it, and it's probably not going to be called that, but the reason a lot of people use this term is because the leaked perks that showed up a while ago last year, both of the perks that seem to tie to this weapon contain the word Dubious in, so it seems to have been the sort of name that is coined for this weapon. I imagine it'll probably change in Destiny 2, but either way, the perks back then stated that this rocket launcher delivers a high energy volley of explosive ordnance, and that kills from the volley add another round to the volley. Now, if you actually look at it in the gameplay, you can see it appears to do arc damage. To a certain extent, it almost looks like the volleys kind of home in on the target. And on the left-hand side, you can see it does indeed have a perk called Kill Clip. So it could well be that Kill Clip ties into that kind of latter perk that we spoke about. So during the volley process, it is adding more to the rounds, or it could be something entirely different. But it is really cool to finally actually see this in-game. A weapon that for a long time we have been hoping would be added to Destiny 1, thinking maybe there was sort of some hidden exotic, something like Outbreak Prime that would send us on a crazy epic quest and finally we would get this, but it now seems that we won't be seeing this until Destiny 2. But either way, it looks really cool. Looks like it does some serious splash damage, and of course being an arc weapon is going to be great for any time there's an arc burn modifier. And also, interestingly, it is worth noting that energy-based weapons do bonus damage to supers. This is something I'll be speaking about later on, but that's kind of partly where these sort of kinetic and energy-based slots come in, because if you are fighting people in the Crucible, then energy-based weapons do bonus damage to supers. So anyway, that's just something to think about, but then if you've got a rocket launcher, you're probably not going to need that bonus damage, because I imagine it's going to do an insane amount of damage. Either way, that is exotic number 1. Moving on from there, we're then going to jump over to the next one, which is an exotic arc shotgun. Now this one, initially, if you look at it at this clip, it doesn't necessarily look that special. And of course, if you look at it at this clip, it similarly doesn't look anything crazy. However, when you actually look at it in action, you can actually see that after it fires the shotgun blast, the sort of power cores at the side open up, and this weapon just looks far, far too unique to not be an exotic. I appreciate at this stage, until we get names, and of course, until we actually see them in game, it's hard to 100% clarify that these are indeed exotics, but if we look at Destiny 1 as an example, then typically any weapons that are extremely interestingly designed or kind of very different are generally speaking exotics, or raid weapons, but at this stage I very much doubt we're going to see raid weapons. So for the time being, I'm going to say that this is an exotic shotgun, deals arc damage, looks really cool, especially following the shot. After that, moving on to the next one, this, again, using the exact same principle before, that if it's a kind of interesting looking weapon, something that looks a little bit too outlandish, a little bit crazy, then it must be an exotic, and that is this sniper rifle. It looks really, really cool, of course, when you see during the reload animation, you can see all the different sort of wires or these coils that wrap around it, and when you actually zoom in, using the scope, you can see that the actual target itself is highlighted, so there's probably a perk tied to that, but this looks extremely cool. It's got a D5 on the side, I'm not entirely sure what that is, and actually if you look in this scene here, you can see it's on the back of the Warlock very carefully. You can see those cables just down by the side. We don't get a kind of clear look at it, but it does still look very, very cool, and as someone that likes snipers, someone that typically carries them, or in Destiny 1 at least carries them in my secondary slot, I appreciate in Destiny 2 that's going to be a very different thing, but I'm definitely a big fan of snipers, so this looks incredibly cool. Next up, moving on from there, this one here is 100% a brand new exotic. This is an exotic hand cannon. It was actually on display in the Destiny 2 hands-on premiere. There was a glass cabinet with some 3D printed weapons. Some of them were legendary weapons, some of them were from the new foundries, like the Vice foundry, and some of them were exotics. This one is most definitely an exotic. It was also shown during the vidoc in the section where Luke Smith specifically spoke about new exotics. And if you actually take a look at it, you might not see it in this clip, but in the 3D printed version, it has a rather large magazine, akin to something you would find on, say, an automatic pistol. On the side, down the barrel, these are actually rats and not bears. And when you actually look at it in motion, it does indeed look like it's sort of an automatic pistol. It seems to fire at these fast bursts, so hoping that it is indeed like a Glock. And again, if we jump to the scene here, you can actually see, whilst walking up the mountain, the hunter is holding it in his hand. Next up, moving on from there, we arrive at what I'm going to call the Yalahorn of grenade launchers. If you look at the actual barrel itself, Has a very similar design to Yellowhorn. Of course, you have this lion's head over the front, and of course the actual rocket barrel, or the grenade barrel, should I say, comes out the mouth. And of course, when looking at it in action, you can see it has a very sort of detailed design all the way down the barrel, these engravings and stuff. But this is a grenade launcher, of course, one of the brand new weapon types in Destiny 2. Fires out a single volley, and based on the way that it reloads, I'm probably going to assume that it's one of those things where it'll need to be like reloaded after every single shot, as opposed to, say, the Omolon grenade launch we've seen, where you actually load a few different grenades into the barrel and then you can fire off sort of 4 or 5 shots before you actually have to reload. So if this is a single shot grenade launcher, then expect it to do a large amount of damage, expect it to have a rather interesting perk, because of course the reload animation afterwards is probably going to be a little bit slow. So either way, it looks pretty cool, and of course in this shot here you can actually see wings on the back as well, so I do really like the design, and for anyone that particularly likes, say, Yellowhorn, then this might be the closest thing you're going to get in Destiny 2. Now, moving on from there, this one here is incredibly difficult to see, but if you look back at Destiny trailers and use them as example points, then typically when they talk about exotics, they like to show multiple in the frame. And in the back, you can of course see that rocket launcher that we're going to tentatively call Dubious Volley, or the microphone rocket launcher, whatever you want to call it. But at the front, you can actually see this fusion rifle. And again, in this section here, when it's slightly lit up, you can see that it's got a rather interesting design, something that doesn't necessarily fit the existing weapon foundries. We know what Omolon fusion rifles look like, or fusion rifles from other foundries. And this definitely, especially when you look at, say, the power cores, the sort of like little circular nodes on the top, does look rather exotic. So the fact that it shares the frame with the other exotic rocket launcher, I'm going to hazard a guess that this is probably an exotic fusion rifle. Then after that, jumping over to a rather interesting, what I'm going to assume is a grenade launcher. It does have a rather interesting way to kind of load the mag. It doesn't have your typical grenade shells. It's got this almost sort of cartridge kind of thing, but it does have this sort of space look to it, this almost sort of portal gun-esque look. And when you drop down and the weapon is fired, it appears to push out this sort of wind blast or void blast. I appreciate there is a team there, so they could have kind of team shot those enemies. But the way that it drops down and just fires and blows away all those enemies, I reckon it's got a pretty wide spread, so it might be one of those things where instead of firing out a single grenade shell, it might just fire out like a big void energy blast, something like that. But that does look incredibly cool. It's probably one of the coolest ones that I've seen in terms of form factor and stuff, so definitely looking forward to finding out more about that one. Then after that, I want to jump over to this one here. This is a weapon that was not shown in the gameplay trailers, but did show up again in the kind of aforementioned glass cabinets where they have 3D printed weapons. This one, I will admit, is the one that I'm not too sure, because if you look at the very top, it does look like one of those sort of Omolon energy cartridges. So it could well be, say, like an Omolon rocket launcher or assault rifle, but it does again have a rather interesting design to the point where it could be mistaken for an exotic. So at this stage, I have no context for this because we haven't seen any gameplay. We have no idea how it behaves, how it looks in game. The scale is also a little bit misleading. It could be much bigger in game or much smaller. So I thought I'd highlight it anyway for those of you guys that wouldn't necessarily have seen it, because if you haven't seen anything from the actual event itself, then you might have missed this one. But this is definitely going to be on my list of ones that I'm not 100% certain on. Also, very quick shout out to Scarrow9 and Meanhole, both of whom lent me photos of this gun for this video. So you can find a link to their channel and Twitter in the description box down below. So jumping over from there, then as a very, very quick recap, of course, these ones you would have seen if you saw my video the other day, but you have the Sunshot Exotic Hand Cannon. The main perks on this one are that it gives you explosive rounds, it also highlights targets, and then when you do kill your enemies, it creates a Firefly-like effect that explode into solar energy. You then have the Risk Runner Exotic SMG, which is a really awesome looking weapon. I absolutely love the SMG weapon archetype, definitely one of my new favourites. But this one here increases your weapon power when you're taking arc damage, so it's like you're absorbing the energy and then kind of putting it out through your weapon. Plus, when you fire your shots, it can chain into arc lightning, and it can also return ammo to your magazine. And finally, the other one's Sweet Business. This one has a large mag, it has increased hip fire, and when you hold down the trigger, it boosts range and rate of fire, whilst also loading any ammo that you pick up off the floor directly into your magazine. So, interesting exotics, but of course those ones I've got complete gameplay of, so if you guys haven't seen them and want to see more of those, check them out in the description box down below. Now, finally, the last three, these ones, I'm not entirely sure whether they will actually be returning. We've seen them in the trailers, but they're being held by NPCs, so we don't know whether they will be weapons that we ourselves can acquire, or whether they will just be present in game as sort of, you know, symbols or things that we've seen in the past, kind of like throwing back Destiny 1 without actually giving them to us. I personally don't mind if we don't get these, because as I've mentioned, I want a completely new experience in Destiny 2, so I don't want Bungie to start bringing back old exotics. I would rather we just get nothing but new stuff. However, they have been cited, so mention them anyway. This section here where it actually zooms in on the tower where they're talking about quests and sort of, you know, meeting NPCs in the wild. This is, without a doubt, No Land Beyond, but of course it's got wraps around it. It's got this material wrapped around the barrel, but you can of course see by the handle at the top and the sight, that is unmistakably No Land Beyond. So, again, whether we actually get it ourselves in-game, I have no idea, but for the time being, that is the first returning exotic. We also have Cade 6's Ace of Spades. Of course, we've seen this one before. We've got this in Destiny 1. And in this scene here, where of course he takes out some Cabal and then turns around and talks to the camera, we do get to see it very clearly in his hand. But since he is going to be one of the main characters in the game, I imagine they're probably just going to give it to him as his iconic weapon, and then we won't necessarily get access to it. And of course, if you guys saw my video yesterday, then we saw Lord Shaxx standing in this corridor with a raised lighter on his back. So if you guys have played Destiny 1, then you know all about that. Exotic sword, solo damage, pretty good, one of the kind of go-to swords, so pretty cool to see that. But either way, that's pretty much it. Those are the 14 exotics that have been cited so far. Let me know what you guys think of them in the description box down below. Have you got any particular favourites? What other exotics are you hoping to see? I will at some point do a video talking about some gear as well, because we've seen a few pieces of exotic armour. But for the time being, that is it. So if you missed any of my Destiny 2 videos, be sure to catch up. I'll leave a link to the Destiny 2 playlist in the description box down below. And also, as a very quick reminder, don't forget that my competition is still running for the 3D printed Guardian figures and the massive giant foam hammer. The link to the competition is in the description box down below. That closes next week, so enter if you guys haven't already for a chance to win all that stuff there. Thanks for watching, take it easy, catch you next time, peace out.